Elara stepped across the threshold of the abandoned manor, under a waning moon, her pulse thrumming in her ears as wind rattled broken panes. Each footstep echoed down a hallway draped in tattered crimson wallpaper, whispering long-forgotten secrets. Elara's breath puffed white in the chill, her lantern's flicker revealing silhouettes of ornate frames, their portraits' eyes gouged from the canvases. Shadows pooled like ink at her boots as she pressed deeper, hearing a distant creak that sounded unnervingly like a sigh. She paused by a cracked mirror, studying her reflection, shivering, and Mark's warning echoed in her mind. Trust nothing in this place. Yet her curiosity propelled her forward into a grand foyer where a tarnished chandelier swayed, though no breeze stirred. There, the hush fractured with the faint scrape of a chair being pulled across stone, though the room lay empty. Elara's voice trembled as she whispered, "Hello?" No answer came, only a low hum reverberating through the rafters. She lifted her lantern higher, the glass trembling as if it sensed her fear. Every instinct screamed to flee, but some unseen force guided her toward a set of double doors half ajar. Beyond, darkness curled like smoke, beckoning her to discover what horrors slumbered within. Elara's heart pounded as she crossed the threshold into a dilapidated ballroom, its once glittering mirrors dulled by grime. A faded portrait of a stern matron loomed over a marble fireplace, her painted gaze following every tremor of Elara's lantern. The woman remembered Mark's whispered caution. Hallucinations or not, danger wears 1,000 faces here. Across the floor, warped dance marks traced where couples once spun in delighted abandon. The silence pressed in until a distant piano note rang, sharp, solitary, and impossibly real. Elara froze, lantern light quivering against cracked tiles, as the note repeated twice more, each echo rippling like a cold breath against her neck. She swallowed, voice barely above a whisper. "Is anyone there?" No reply came, only the piano's hollow refrain drifting down a shadowed corridor. The atmosphere thickened as dust settled into drifts around her ankles, and the grand doors behind her slammed shut without warning. A shiver lanced through her spine as she realized the manor had already claimed another victim. Her. Elara spun toward the source of the piano's mournful chord, her lantern illuminating dust-laden columns that stretched toward a collapsed ceiling. Each inhalation tasted of mildew and sorrow. She traced her fingers along carved stone balusters, their edges worn smooth by time. When the note struck again, this time just behind her, she stumbled backward, lantern tilting to cast a jagged beam across broken instruments scattered like scavenged prey. A battered piano crouched against a wall, its keys stained and strewn with debris. Elara's voice trembled. "Who plays for ghosts?" A gust of wind rattled the room's ruins, but no wind should reach here. As she approached, the piano's ivory keys depressed of their own accord, playing a final discordant chord before silence swallowed the hall. Shaken, Elara retraced her steps through shattered glass, strewn across a mosaic floor, depicting a lost family crest. Her lantern's glow revealed claw-like scratches gouged into the stone, fresh as if marked moments before. A soft whisper curled against her ear, indistinct yet urgent. She jerked around, lantern beams slicing through the gloom, revealing nothing but a scuffed footprint leading into a side alcove. She swallowed hard and forced her legs forward, each step echoing against the arched walls. As the whisper grew louder, it coalesced into a single word: leave. Elara's throat tightened, her own voice drowned by a surge of static laughter that reverberated around her like frigid water. She stumbled into the alcove and discovered a child-sized shoe, polished and pristine, resting atop a dusty lectern. Elara's throat burned as she crouched beside the lone shoe, its leather unmarred yet coated with a thin layer of dust. Her mind raced. Was a child lost here long ago, or was something else wearing that shoe to lure her deeper? She rose and turned to see a pale handprint bloom on the stone arch above, as if pressed by invisible fingers. Heart hammering, she yanked her lantern upward to reveal a small portrait tucked into a carved niche, a girl no older than 8, her eyes rimmed with tears and etched with sorrow. "I'm here," Elara whispered, voice barely carrying. The portrait's lips seemed to twitch, and the air turned ice cold. She stumbled back as the floor beneath her trembled, sending ripples through the dust. In that moment, Elara knew the manor's watcher had awakened, and it had only just begun. Elara stumbled down a spiraling stone staircase as her lantern's flame danced against slick walls, etched with arcane symbols. Her boots slipped in the pooling water at each step, sending ripples that reflected shattered murals overhead. She gripped the banister, its wrought iron coils cold and slick with moss. Every breath emerged in frosty plumes as the air thickened with damp rot, and something fouler beneath. At the base of the stairs, a vast subterranean chamber yawned open, lit by bioluminescent fungi clinging to the damp stones. The fungus cast sickly teal glows that pulsed in an irregular rhythm, like a dying heartbeat. A narrow stone bridge spanned a chasm over inky black water, whose surface seemed unnaturally still. From the darkness below, a soft gurgling rose, echoing across the cavern in mocking tones. Elara raised her lantern to peer over the bridge's edge, heart hammering, and glimpsed the faint outline of skeletal hands breaking the water's surface. She swallowed and whispered to herself, "I shouldn't have come here," though some compulsive force urged her forward. She placed one trembling foot onto the bridge's ancient stones, each step releasing echoes that dissolved into the subterranean gloom. Elara's boots clacked against rotten planks as she advanced across the bridge, each board groaning under her weight. The lantern's glow warped in the fungus light, sending her shadow dancing against jagged walls. Halfway across, the bridge shuddered, and a board cracked beneath her foot with a resounding snap. She leapt back as a skeletal arm thrust itself through the splintered wood, grasping at empty air. A cold wave of nausea washed over her, and she staggered to the far side, heart pounding like a drum in her ears. Behind her, the bridge creaked and bent, as if alive, then settled with a final discordant groan. In the chamber beyond, a circle of stone pedestals bore weathered relics. A tarnished doll, a cracked amulet, a rusted key, each smeared with dark stains. A hollow voice resonated, its source impossible to locate. "Choose." Elara's mouth went dry, and she edged closer, swallowing her dread. Her fingers hovered over the doll's porcelain cheek as the voice whispered again, "Choose, void of mercy." Elara fought the urge to flee as she studied the relics arranged in a bleak semicircle beneath the fungus glow. Each pedestal stood waist-high, carved with indecipherable glyphs. She reached out and gripped the rusted key, its metal cold and impossibly heavy, as if tethered to some ancient burden. The moment her skin met iron, the ground trembled, and the cavern's pitch-black water began to swirl. A chorus of distant whispers rose, each syllable warped and pleading. Elara's pulse raced. She clutched the key tighter as the fossils of long-dead creatures in the walls rattled free, clattering to the floor. From the shadowed periphery, two glowing red eyes blinked at her before vanishing. She glanced around, breath caught in her throat, and saw the amulet vibrating on its pedestal, as if alive. The hollow voice returned, stronger and closer. "Your choice seals your fate." With trembling resolve, Elara turned and pressed the key into a keyhole carved into the pedestal's side. The key clicked, and shockwaves rippled through the chamber, sending droplets from the cavern ceiling fluttering like cold raindrops. The amulet shattered against its pedestal, shards spinning into the air before vanishing. Elara sprang back as the stone bridge above trembled, and a section crumbled into the black water below. The floor under her shifted, fissures racing outward like spider legs. From those cracks, smoky tendrils of darkness unfurled and coiled toward her lantern's light. She raised the lantern defensively, its flame flaring defiantly. The tendrils hesitated before recoiling with screeches that resonated in her bones. As the dust settled, the candlelight revealed a newly opened archway carved into the far wall, pulsing with crimson light. Elara's legs shook but carried her forward. She crossed the fissured floor, every crack threatening to swallow her, until she stood before the archway. The crimson glow pulsed in time with her heartbeat, beckoning her onward. Elara stepped through the crimson arch into a narrow corridor, hewn from obsidian black stone. The air was hotter here, stiff with the scent of blood and iron. Torch sconces gasped with unnatural flame that burned without fuel. As she passed, the flames flared to life, revealing walls etched with scenes of suffering. A chained figure wailing in agony, hands severed and flung aside, faces contorted in eternal torment. Her skin crawled as the vision played before her. A distant chant began, low and rhythmic, echoing from deeper within. Alara's voice trembled as she spoke aloud to the darkness. "What are you?" The chant rose, voices multiplying until the corridor itself seemed to hum. She pressed forward, compelled by equal parts dread and determination, lantern flame wavering. Ahead, a massive iron door loomed, its surface slick with dark stains and inscribed with a single word in dripping runes. "Begone!" Alara pressed her palm against the iron door's rune-inscribed surface as a low rumble coursed underfoot. The heavy metal yielded with a groan, revealing a vast circular chamber veiled in crimson haze. Flickering braziers mounted on obsidian pillars cast dancing shadows across concentric tiles, carved with grotesque faces that seemed to leer at her every breath. She inhaled the acrid scent of old blood and drifted ash. Her lantern cast a feeble ring of light as she stepped onto the center tile, its surface warm and pulsing like a living heart. A chorus of distant wails swelled, then ground to an abrupt halt, plunging the chamber into an oppressive hush. Alara's spine tingled as the faces in the floor shifted, their mouths opening in silent screams. She swallowed hard, voice trembling as she whispered, "What did I unleash?" The brazier flames guttered, and from the crimson mist emerged a figure, tall, gaunt, draped in ragged robes the color of dried blood, its face hidden beneath a hood. A single skeletal hand extended toward her, and the rune below her foot flared bright scarlet. Alara's lantern flickered as her heart thundered in answer to an unseen summons. Alara stumbled backward as the robed figure advanced, its movements fluid yet unnatural. Each step it took caused the rune beneath her foot to pulse more fiercely, searing cold through her boot. The brazier light revealed pallid hands protruding from the mist, reaching but never quite touching her. She steadied her breathing and lifted the lantern high, steady flame defying the encroaching gloom. The figure halted at the chamber's edge, tilting its head in a gesture both curious and menacing. Alara's voice quavered as she demanded, "Who are you?" No answer came, only the distant drip of water echoing off obsidian walls. Then a gravelly whisper slithered from the figure's hood. "One who remembers." Pain lanced through Alara's mind, memories fractured by fear, of a forgotten promise made in childhood. She staggered and lowered her lantern to reveal the figure's face, a hollow skull grinning as if mocking her. A scream tore from Alara's throat as the rune's glow surged, shadows flickering wildly. The skeletal figure drifted closer until its hollow eyes aligned with hers. Time seemed to slow as the brazier flames snapped out, leaving only the lantern's weak glow. Dust swirled in a sudden draft that smelled of rot and brimstone. The figure stretched an arm forward, its bony fingers tracing a trembling arc in the air. Alara's lantern light caught motes of ash that spiraled upward. She dropped to one knee, heart pounding, and recalled Mark's last words, "Trust yourself above all." Gathering resolve, she raised her free hand and traced the rune symbol with trembling fingers. The floor quaked, and the faces inlaid in the tile shattered into fragments that clattered away. The skeletal figure recoiled, emitting a chorus of tortured clicks. Alara's voice rang out, "Begone!" The chamber shook violently, dust and debris raining from the ceiling as the skeletal figure dissolved into motes of red light. Alara's lantern clattered to the floor, its flame guttering before reigniting in a steady blaze. The brazier torches flared back to life, illuminating a newly revealed corridor beyond the original iron door. The tile faces lay broken, powerless. Alara retrieved her lantern and rose, voice steady despite pounding adrenaline. "I broke its whole." She moved toward the corridor's entrance, each step echoing in the sudden silence. A distant rumble beckoned her onward, guiding her through a narrow passage where obsidian walls gave way to ancient brickwork slick with condensation. Water dripped from unseen crevices as she followed the corridor's curve into deeper darkness. Elara entered a narrow crypt, lined with alcoves housing stone sarcophagi, each lid carved with the likeness of a long-dead ancestor. Torchlight danced across moss-clad reliefs of warriors and mourners. As she passed, a distant clang echoed, metal on stone. She spun to find an ancient sword embedded in the wall, its blade blackened, runes glowing faintly gold. The chant she heard earlier returned, a low hum that resonated through her bones. Her voice caught as she murmured, "Why am I here?" The sarcophagi lids began to grate open one by one, releasing curling wisps of pale vapor that drifted toward her. Elara's breath caught in her throat as the warding runes along the crypt floor lit in sequence, forming a path toward the sword. Her heart pounded. This was the key to ending the mana's curse, or so she prayed. Yet a deeper dread seized her as the vapors coalesced into ghostly forms that blocked her way. Elara pressed her palm against the cold hilt of the ancient sword embedded in the obsidian wall, feeling its pulse resonate through her bones. Each beat echoed like a distant drum calling her deeper into the manor's heart. The torch flames along the corridor flared and dimmed as though breathing in time with the blade's rhythm. Sweat trickled down her temples despite the chill, and her boots slipped on the slick stone floor carved with fresh runic blood. She inhaled, tasting iron and ash, and recalled the girl's portrait in the alcove, the silent watcher whose sorrow had awakened this nightmare. With trembling resolve, Elara yanked the sword free. The blade slid forth with a scream of tortured metal, shards of rune-etched obsidian cracking away and tumbling into shadow. A shockwave rippled down the corridor, extinguishing torches in a domino of darkness. She stumbled back, lantern beam dancing wildly, as the walls oozed red ichor that pooled at her feet. Through the sudden gloom, a distant clang reverberated, a massive iron grate sealing behind her, trapping her in the blood-soaked corridor. Heart hammering, she gripped the sword with both hands and whispered, "No turning back now." The corridor beyond the grate led into a vaulted hall whose ceiling arched high above, lost in pitch black. Elara's lantern revealed dozens of statues lining the walls, life-sized figures of men, women and children, carved from blood-stained marble, their faces twisted in silent agony. Each statue held an object: a doll, a candlestick, a rusted key, a single rose. The air pulsed with a low chant, voices merging into a rumble beneath the stone floor. Elara raised the sword, its blade reflecting the lantern's glow, as the statue's eyes flickered briefly to life. She stepped forward, voice steadying. "Who are you to judge?" A ripple ran through the statues, and one by one they shifted, ivory limbs creaking as they descended from their plinths. Elara backed toward the grate, but iron bars sealed her path. The statues advanced, each step echoing like a funeral march across marble. She gripped the sword's hilt, ready to strike, as the chanting crescendoed into a scream that filled the hall. Elara lunged forward, sword swinging in a wide arc that struck the nearest statue's marble shoulder. The blade bit deep, shattering stone and sending shards clattering across the floor. A gout of black ichor hissed where steel met marble, and the statue's eyes flared with ghostly light. Elara rolled back, chest heaving, as the shattered piece reassembled itself on the statue's arm with a sickly snap. She realized brute force would not suffice. The chanting shifted, voices reciting a litany of sins, betrayal, abandonment, broken vows. Elara gripped the sword's runic hilt, recalling the girl's face in the portrait, her tear-streaked cheeks begging for release. With a cry, Elara plunged the sword into the cracked marble floor at her feet. The runes on the blade glowed gold and released a shockwave that knocked the statues off balance, their bodies toppling backward in unison. Dust and stone fragments filled the air as the chanting abruptly ceased, leaving Elara panting amid the silence. The moment the shockwave faded, a hidden doorway slid open in the opposite wall, revealing a spiral staircase illuminated by flickering red torches. Elara steadied herself and raised her lantern. Her reflection danced on damp stone rails, carved with the same sorrowful faces she had seen before. Each step upward echoed hollowly, reverberating in the silent hall below. The air here was stifling, heavy with the scent of decay and old blood. As she climbed, distant sobs filled the stairwell, growing louder with every revolution. Elara's grip tightened on the sword, and she whispered to the shadows above, "Show yourself." The sobs ceased as she reached a landing, where a single torch burned bright. There, a stone dais held an empty cradle rocking gently, though no wind stirred. Beneath the torch, a small puddle of tears glistened on the dais's edge. Elara stepped onto the landing, lantern illuminating the cradle's smooth wood and satin lining, stained with flecks of crimson. The air grew frigid, and the torch flame flickered wildly. A child's lullaby, warped and distant, drifted through the stairwell. Elara's voice cracked as she knelt before the cradle. "I'm sorry." Shadows coalesced in the hollow of the cradle, forming the outline of a small girl. The girl raised pale arms, and the cradle rocked faster. Elara placed a hand over her heart, tears glistening on her cheeks as she spoke softly, "I'll set you free." The sword at her side vibrated, runes blazing. She reached down, yanking the satin lining free. Underneath lay a tarnished music box, engraved with the same crest from the mosaics above. As Elara opened its lid, the lullaby ceased, and the girl's form shimmered before dissolving into motes of light that drifted upward, leaving the cradle empty and silent. Elara emerged from the crypt into a vast circular rotunda crowned by a shattered glass dome that dripped cold rain despite a cloudless night sky above. Her lantern beam trembled across concentric rows of broken pews and moss-clad stone benches, all stained a deep crimson where long-dead worshippers once knelt. In the center stood a cracked marble altar, its fissures filled with black roses curling into ash as though burning from within. Every droplet that fell from the dome splattered on the petals with a hollow plink, echoing like distant bones tapping a funeral rhythm. Elara knelt before the altar, boots slipping on the slick marble as she traced a trembling finger over the carved crest, matching the portrait's frame. A chill wind rose, though no breeze could reach here, whipping her hair against her damp leather jacket. She whispered, "This place, it grieves," recalling the girl's tear-streaked portrait whose sorrow had summoned her. As her voice faded, the altar's surface rippled like obsidian water, and a spectral child's form drifted above the roses, translucent and flickering. The girl's hollow eyes fixed on Elara's, and letters formed in dripping blood across the marble. "Remember your promise." Elara's breath caught, her heart thundering as fragmented memories of a childhood vow to protect the innocent surged to the surface. Elara stood as the girl's apparition drifted toward the dome's edge, rain trailing like smoky tendrils through her form. The rotunda's acoustics magnified every drip into a relentless percussion that echoed in Elara's skull. She lifted the rune-etched sword before her, its blade pulsing with gold light against the gloom. The marble floor's black veins writhed like living roots, seeping upward toward her boots. She swallowed hard as a hushed voice echoed through the space. "You broke the chains, break mine." From the shadows between benches, a skeletal choir emerged, skulls bowed in silent homage. Elara's voice trembled but rang clear. "I will set you free." She advanced, each step fracturing the marble beneath, crimson light weaving through the cracks like spilled blood. The choir's hollow gaze followed her with urgent expectation as the rain intensified, drumming against shattered glass in a frantic crescendo. Elara steadied her breath and raised the sword, ready to shatter the choir's curse and fulfill her promise. The skeletal choir moved as one, jawless skulls clicking in mournful rhythm. Elara steadied herself and shouted, "Sing no more." She plunged the sword into the obsidian vein, snaking across the floor. A thunderous crack split the air as the rotunda shuddered, and the choir's forms fractured, shards of bone cascading like hail. Their fragmented husks crumbled into swirling dust that spiraled upward and dissipated into nothingness. The black roses atop the altar disintegrated, petals of ash drifting to settle at Elara's feet. She yanked the sword free, the runes blazing gold and casting long shadows across the shattered marble. Moonlight returned in brilliant slivers through the dome, illuminating a polished marble path leading to a rusted iron door on the far side. Exhausted but unbroken, Elara sheathed the sword at her back and followed the lighted path, each step echoing with the promise of final confrontation. Elara reached the iron door, etched with the phrase, "The heart must bleed to be free," its surface pitted with rust. She pressed her palm to the cold metal, and it swung open onto a narrow corridor lined with floor-to-ceiling mirrors. Each polished pane reflected her image countless times, but every reflection flickered, showing her in stages of despair, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped, tears streaming. Her lantern light fractured across the glass, casting a kaleidoscope of her own fear. She whispered, "I carry my own heart," and stepped forward. With each stride, a mirror cracked behind her, shards dissolving into ember-like motes of red light. The corridor ended in a circular chamber where an ice-carved crystalline heart hovered above a pedestal, its surface translucent and veined with scarlet light. A chill wind rose, carrying distant sobs that reverberated through the mirrors. Elara's breath caught as she realized the final trial lay ahead, bleeding truth to shatter the manor's darkest secret. Elara knelt before the crystalline heart, lantern light dancing on frost that formed at the pedestal's base. The air was bone-chilling, each breath a misty plume. She placed her free hand over her chest, feeling the rapid beat of her own heart. Summoning every ounce of courage, she pressed her fingertip to the sword's guard and let a single drop of blood fall onto the ice. The crystal pulsed bright scarlet, then shattered with a crystalline chime that echoed through the manor's depths. Ice fragments cascaded to the floor, melting into rivulets that traced through every corridor she had traversed. A warm breeze swept through the chamber as sunlight burst through the dome's shards, bathing the rotunda in golden rays. The oppressive weight lifted, replaced by a hush of peaceful gratitude. Elara rose, blade sheathed and lantern extinguished, and whispered, "Rest now." Outside, dawn's first light crept across the horizon, promising a new beginning for both Elara and the souls she had freed. Elara emerged from the mirror corridor into a vast atrium beneath a vaulted ceiling carved from living stone. Bioluminescent veins pulsed along the walls, casting undulating teal patterns across broken statues of angels weeping molten silver tears. Her boots crunched on shattered marble mosaic, depicting a celestial battle. In the center stood a circular dais ringed by pool-sized basins, filled with brackish water that shimmered with oily rainbows. Above, the ceiling opened to a starless void, and from its darkness echoed distant thunder, though no storm raged. Elara held the rune-etched sword at her side, lantern extinguished, and listened as silver droplets tinkled into the basins. Each drop sent ripples that morphed the reflections into scenes of the manor's past. Laughter turned to screams, joyous faces twisted in torment. She advanced to the nearest basin, peering into the shifting tableau, and whispered, "Show me the truth." The image solidified into a memory, hers and the girl's, of a vow broken in childhood, a promise betrayed that had bound the manor's suffering to her own guilt. Elara knelt at the basin's edge, eyes fixed on the reflection that replayed her childhood promise to protect an innocent friend. Rain of silver tears continued to fall, each droplet fracturing the memory image until only shards remained. She pressed a hand to the basin's cool rim, and the water stilled. From the center rose a glowing orb of silver light, hovering above the oily surface. Its radiance illuminated the atrium in harsh contrast, revealing glyphs etched into the dais in swirling patterns of loss and betrayal. Elara's voice trembled. "I failed you." The orb pulsed, as though weighing her confession, then split into two ribbons of light that wound around her wrists like chains. She gasped as the light bit into her skin, but no pain came, only warmth and clarity. The angel statue's tears ceased, and the atrium fell silent except for the orb's steady heartbeat glow. The orb's light flared, and Elara was lifted upright as the ribbons tightened, drawing her toward the dais's center. She struggled, but the light guided her without malice, pulling her to kneel on the shattered mosaic. In a voice that resonated like distant bells, The orb spoke her broken vow back to her. Promise to protect, promise to remember, promise to atone. Tears welled as Elara repeated each pledge, voice stronger with every word. With the final promise, the ribbons dissolved, and the orb's light merged into the sword at her side, infusing its runes with silvery fire. The basins shattered outward, water cascading in slow motion onto the mosaic shards, each drop crystallizing as it touched the ground. Elara rose, hand on the newly ablaze blade, and spoke softly, I remember. The atrium trembled as silver fire pulsed through the sword, sending waves of light rippling across the living stone. The vaulted ceilings void filled with dawn's first light, seeping through the manor's cracks, turning shadows to warm amber. The angel statues' molten tears solidified into gleaming silver sculptures of weeping wings, their sorrow now preserved. Elara held the sword aloft, lantern still unlit, and declared, Your sorrow is lifted. The bioluminescent veins dimmed, then brightened in steady rhythm, as if the manor itself took breath. The shattered domes of the ceiling began to knit together, glass shards rising into place like reluctant birds returning to a broken nest. Elara stepped back from the dais, boots echoing on mended mosaic. In that moment, every whispered scream and tear-stained face across the manor's halls found silent peace. Elara sheathed the silver-infused sword as the atrium transformed into a serene hall bathed in golden dawn light. Moss retreated from stone, and the once weeping statues now held flowers of living silver blossoms at their bases. The broken pews reassembled, forming a silent congregation awaiting rebirth. Elara felt exhaustion and relief wash over her as the final echo of the orb's heartbeat faded into gentle silence. She walked toward the newly reassembled dome's rim, peering out to see a clear sky and birds circling above. In a voice soft with wonder, she said, It's over. A gentle breeze carried a single silver petal down into her palm. She closed her hand around it, her heart light for the first time. As she descended the atrium steps, each footfall felt like a promise kept, one that would live beyond the manor's walls, into the world of the living. Elara stepped through the manor's front doors, into an overgrown courtyard bathed in the pale light of dawn. Vines strangled marble fountains, their once pristine basins cracked and drained. Each footfall on the cobblestones echoed through the silent air, stirring fallen petals from a ghostly rose garden. The sky above was clear, but a chill wind carried distant whispers of gratitude that brushed against her skin. She paused by a shattered sundial, its gnomon snapped in two, and lifted her gaze to the manor's facade. Its windows now whole, stonework restored to tranquil dignity. In the garden's center, a stone bench bore an inscription, Where hearts were bound, freedom blooms. Elara ran a finger across the carved words, remembering every promise, every tear shed within these walls. Her chest tightened with relief as she realized the manor's curse had ended. She exhaled slowly, voice soft as she spoke to the morning air, Rest now, all who suffered. A single rose petal drifted from the arch above, landing in her palm as the courtyard's first bird song filled the world. Elara followed a winding path of moss-covered stepping stones leading toward a hidden gate at the courtyard's far edge. The gate, once rusted shut, now swung open freely on greased hinges. Beyond lay a forest glade where morning mist curled around stone statues of woodland spirits, faces serene rather than tormented. Sunbeams pierced the haze, illuminating wildflowers tangled in brambles. As Elara stepped through the gate, the mist parted to reveal footprints of silver light leading deeper into the trees. She traced them with a slow step, heart light, whispering, Your journey continues, for she sensed that beyond these gates the freed spirits would find their final peace. Each rustle of leaves sounded like a soft blessing, and the air smelled faintly of lilac and rain. Elara pressed onward, lantern forgotten at her side, guided by the dance of silver light through the ancient wood. The silver footprints led Elara to a tranquil pond, hidden among ancient oaks. Its surface was mirror still, reflecting the rosy dawn sky. She knelt at the water's edge, tracing the footprints end where they faded beneath the glassy surface. Ripples spread outward as she dipped a finger into the cool water, stirring fragments of light that danced across her reflection. In that moment, the pond's depths glowed softly, and shapes of smiling children and adults, the manor's long-lost souls, flickered in the depths before rising and drifting upward like bubbles of memory. Elara watched in quiet wonder as each figure ascended through the morning air until they dispersed among the trees, free at last. Her voice trembled with emotion. "Go in peace." A breeze carried their joyous laughter away, leaving only the gentle lapping of water on stone. Ella rose and turned toward the manor's distant silhouette, now bathed in golden light. She paused at a stone pedestal, bearing the tarnished music box from the cradle, its lid still ajar. Inside lay a single silver blossom petal, the promise of new beginnings. Elara closed the lid gently and tucked the music box into her satchel, feeling its weight as a reminder of the journey's cost and the souls she had saved. Birds took flight overhead, their wings glittering like living motes of light. She inhaled the forest's fresh scent, and a calm resolve settled within her to carry the lessons of the manor into the world. With a final glance at the pond and the faint shimmer of silver footprints dissolving in the mist, Elara turned and walked back along the mossy path toward the waking world. Elara emerged on a quiet country road that led from the forest to the world beyond. Morning dew sparkled on wild grasses, and distant church bells tolled the hour. She paused and placed a hand over her heart, feeling its steady rhythm. Once bound by guilt, now guided by hope. In her satchel, the music box and silver petal lay nestled together, tokens of sorrow transformed into strength. Elara smiled softly, her breath catching with possibility, and whispered into the new day, "The promise lives on." As she walked toward the rising sun, the manor's silhouette faded behind her, a testament to her courage and compassion. Every step carried her forward into the lives she would touch, carrying the light of memory and redemption wherever she roamed.